Hello and welcome to another video from the only YouTube channel you need to not only survive this current apocalypse, but actually enjoy it. And today we're going to talk about how to pick fruit trees without getting ripped off. Because in the past, the general rule of thumb was always buy from a reliable source, meaning local nurseryman, and only buy grafted trees. Well, the first rule about that's a lie is buying a grafted tree don't guarantee nothing for you. People who are in the commercial production business making trees graft them because it just makes more money. That's the only thing. And now I'm sure a lot of people are going to tell me no, it helps get rid of disease, and what it makes trees that ain't grafted won't make fruit, but that's all lies. But we'll do another video about that. First thing you're going to notice, now I got every one of these trees at the flea market, and that's one of the main rules they used to say is don't buy from the flea market. Fact is, you can get good trees at the flea market because even though we live in a fascist state, also known as a free market, where the only way to make a living is to compete with thieves, which means you have to be a thief, you can get good trees at the flea market. General good rule of thumb is to buy from somebody who's either married to somebody making a living or who is retired from making a living, and they can sell you good quality trees even though they're going to be making maybe $10–20 a day doing it, because they got another income coming in. This is just something they do to keep busy and get a little bit extra money. Somebody that actually sells trees for a living and doesn't do anything else has got to make a lot of money. That means they have got to steal, period. Just the way it is. Well, in any case, all these are in pots. You don't see any of them in bags. That is one rule I have learned to stick to. Do not buy trees. You see them in these little bags about that big, might be green or red, and then they got a square label on it saying it's an apple tree or an orange tree or something. Don't get that. Those are trees that were planted, maybe 1 million of them in a row, and then they got a machine that goes in, maybe, I don't know, some kind of a device, goes in, grabs them and pulls them out, puts them in a bag, ties them off, and sends them out for shipping. Those trees will stay green and pretty for 3 or 4 weeks. But when you get them out of the bag and put them in the ground, they have no roots. They're just cut off with little bitty bits and pieces of roots, not enough to survive. Don't get anything in a bag. At one time, understand that was a good way of doing it. They would bring them in burlap balls. It does not work. But in a pot, you can still get ripped off with a pot, but if you just got any kind of understanding of how all this works, you can actually come out okay. When you buying a tree that's in a pot, like this one here, I know that this tree is okay just by looking at the top, because this stuff that's in here is growing in here. I know this is on low, not high def, but low definition, and so you can't really tell it, but this is all stuck together. This is a ball of roots, weed roots and tree roots. And another thing, when you pick this up, the whole pot comes with it. And another good sign is out here is something growing. This is an apple tree, and guess what this is? This is a piece of apple tree growing out of the side. So you know that this has been in this pot for a long time and it's healthy. Now, another good indication, when you see a tree in a pot, sometimes to trick you, they'll put leaves on top of the tree. These leaves are actually the same as these leaves on the tree. These are just leaves that have fell in top of the pot, and so that's not any reason to consider this a bad tree. Another thing to look for is if it's got weeds actually growing. That's a weed that's actually growing in the pot. This pot has had dirt in it a long time. The tree is still flexible. It's got leaves on it. It's a healthy tree, and so that's a good buy. Now this one, you would never buy a tree that looked like this, because that looks like somebody just planted a tree and then filled it right to the top with some wood chips to make it look more natural. But I saw when people that were selling these trees would bring them out to people's cars, that the kid that was carrying them out to the cars grabbed every one of them like this, and which that's not a complete test, but he's carrying them like this, and one of them, the pot fell off the tree and the root ball stayed intact. A lot of times when you go to grab one of these trees, if you really jerk it hard, about that much root ball will come out and the rest is just full of dirt. That's something that somebody dug up that day, stuck in the pot. I'm not saying that won't grow, But the thing is, now you're taking the risk. If they take something like that big, stick it in a pot and leave it there for a year, they took the risk. That's a good live tree. But if you take something home that's just a little bit of roots in there, you're putting it in the ground, you're the one who's going to take the risk of whether or not that's going to live. Now here's another one that my wife got. Just a Llewellyn cedar. And that's not a fruit tree, but we just believe that you got to put a little bit of everything in your yard so that each tree can help to make the other trees happy. Now here's one I want to show you that I didn't buy. I just potted this up. And if you go to the flea market and you go to grabbing a tree, I don't know if you can look down in there, but when you go to pull it, you can see it giving. That means that tree has not been in there long. Usually if you pull on this, the whole pot should jiggle and not the dirt around the tree. But if it does that and you pull hard enough, you're going to pull that out and somebody's going to say, oh, you owe me money, you killed my tree. That's what them trees in the bags look like, and sometimes you'll get trees like this in pots. Be cautious if the person putting the tree in your car is carrying it out by the pot and doesn't hold on to the tree. But this tree has a potential to live. If you actually do get stuck with something like this, what you need to do, this is missing. That's where the taproot would have been. Of course, this is just a shoot, so it was actually going over to another bigger root. But see, it's still got some of these little skinny tendrils. Those are real roots. If you prune this off right here, this little piece might live. Now I'm not interested in this because my woods are filled with these, but
what is it?
I think it's water oak.
Oh.
But anyways, I have I'll show you one that I grew like that I brought it home and it was in a bag. Had about 10 of them. I stuck them all in the ground. 9 of them died. Now I was getting a real good deal when those trees were $4 a piece, but when 9 of them died, that meant that I had a $40 tree, and I'll show you what I got stuck with. Only because I had good soil. This one here is like that. This is a persimmon tree that when I brought it home, all it had was hardly any roots, and I had to cut the whole tree off. I left a little bitty shoot sticking out the side about that big, and over the course of the year it's grown that big. So that's about as that's the best you can do with one of those. It'll take forever for me to get fruit off that tree. That cost me probably $40 or $50 for that tree.
Wow.
Or more, because all the other trees I bought with it just died. That's it. If you don't want to survive, don't listen to me.